the self-acceptance as well as the growth mindset that actually change is possible. And that's where I get the most satisfaction out of is seeing that. And every time somebody tries to tell me, oh, Jami, the humans are the problem, that humans don't change. And I'm like, no, actually, I can tell you humans change. I've changed. And here's how I've seen clients change. So it is possible. And so I also feel like in times of challenge or strife that we go through as a society, as a culture, as a world, that ability to know that change is possible also gives you a sense of hope. And I think hope is important for us to keep moving forward.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. Before Purple Circle, I started and scaled several 7 and 8 figure career coaching businesses myself and consulted with 2 career coaching businesses that are now doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or just building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Regin, and today's guest is Jami de Lou. Jami is a global executive coach, speaker, and inclusion strategist, known for helping leaders and organizations thrive in times of change. As the founder of De Lou Strategies, Jami brings over 15 years of experience leading culture, inclusion, and well-being initiatives inside professional service firms, fast-growth startup, and Fortune 500 companies. She's a certified coach and transformative storyteller who equips leaders with the cultural intelligence and emotional adaptability they need to drive collaboration, innovation, and inclusive impact. Whether she's guiding executives through behavioral change or speaking on stages across US, Europe, and Latin America, Jami's work is rooted in one mission: building more human, resilient, and inclusive workplaces. And it's my pleasure to have her on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Jami.
Thank you, Rich. I'm so glad to be here.
It's my pleasure. So, Jami, tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to become a coach and then start your coaching business.
I spent the bulk of my career leading inclusion in organizations, as you said in the intro. And when I think about the things that the work included over the years, as well as leading talent and well-being and so many of the different things, it really was about people, right, at the core of the work that I do. And I was seeing so many organizations, people often in leadership, the people at the helm of an organization, they really want to get at that systematic change, right? So make the systems more inclusive, have the policies, have the procedures. All of those things matter. But what I also kept seeing was if we really want people to be more adaptive across differences, right? Have that cultural intelligence along with that EQ or emotional intelligence where how they regulate their emotions and navigate teaming, there's a human component to that. And so often people say, oh, focus on the systems. The humans are slow to change. Like that's going to be the tail that comes at the end. And I'm here to tell you in almost 20 years, the humans we don't naturally change on our own, right? It takes initiative, it takes commitment. And so what I started to see was I was creating workshops, I was creating trainings, I was implementing systems and processes. But where it really took root was after the training, after how people were interacting, how people were experiencing their teams, and how leaders were doing that. And frankly, I've learned a lot about leading teams myself too, from the mistakes I've made to the things I've done right. And so all of that sort of led me to really wanting to explore coaching more. And then as I started to explore coaching more and went through a program and all these things, I started to really understand there is a very clear line between coaching and advising, right? And I think that's a big mistake that often gets made is people are like, oh, I coach people in my job every day. And I always remind people that the coach is not the thing that we think of like growing up with sports and having a coach, or if maybe it was mock trial or whatever activity you did in school, right? The coach told you what to do, gave you guidance, maybe yelled at you, like all these different things. And that's not coaching, right? Coaching is a transformative process where you're asking questions and you're coming alongside someone. And so the coach really works with the client and works with the leader or whoever and team that you're engaging with. But it is different from advising. And so when I started to really understand that and be equipped with the skills to do that, it really started to help me get to a deeper level with individuals that I was working with and help them in the change management process. And so for me, it was like, oh, this is an unlock to help people. And it's helped me. I've had incredible growth through coaches that I've worked with as well.
So, according to LinkedIn, it's been about 2 years and a half almost with that you've started your own coaching business, right?
It's actually a little bit longer than that. So, a little bit more kind of how I got started is in the summer of 2020, actually. I had pivoted from a role. I was sort of exploring what came next. And when we think back to the summer of 2020, in particular in the United States, right, globally, we were navigating the early part of a pandemic. But with the racial and social justice uprising that happened that summer of 2020, because I wasn't beholden to any one company, I saw so many people in my network and so many people just everywhere in need of expertise, right? And so I launched my own company, and it was a mix of doing strategy and advisory work. But then the other thing I was seeing was a lot of boards were upping their commitment to say, like, hey, we hear you, we get it. Like, we're not representative enough of our constituents, of our communities, of the people we serve. And so a lot of board of directors, whether in nonprofit or in corporate boards, were looking to increase that representation. And one of the things I've always been committed to is you don't have to wait for differences to exist. You don't have to wait for diversity to exist to prime the environment. And so I created my Unlocking CQ program that takes an assessment. I utilize the IDI, the Intercultural Development Inventory. It has a workshop component, and then it has one-on-one coaching. And from the summer of 2020 to fast forward all the way to 2025, I've not only worked with nonprofit boards and their executive leadership teams, but I've also implemented it in corporate environments as well, and kind of taken it on an approach of what it can look like if you scale it in an organization. And through that, like really tapped into the coaching. So I think this is something that is a misnomer. Is a lot of times people think you don't start growing your business or your coaching or whatever you're doing until you go out fully on your own. And I actually think as long as you don't have any non-competes that you have to deal with, it is actually beneficial to start growing it while you're probably doing something else and utilize what you can implement inside of your organization that you're working for, but also what can you do with clients that you work with, obviously minding that non-compete, little logistics that you have to navigate. But that's really how I got started, and how it's grown from there was rooted in really trying to show up in a time where there was no way I was going to sit on the sidelines and not be a part of the solution and helping people better understand each other and really adapt across differences. And that's, I think, it crystallized the mission I've always had, but was very clear. And I think there was an opening for people to be more open to start doing that work. And so it was a really unique opportunity to be able to launch at that time.
And currently you're doing it full time, or you're still on that kind of phase?
No, full time. So I think, working with clients, and it is a balance of the coaching practice that I have, as you said in my intro, speaking engagements that I do. It's interesting, and I love strategy work as well. So, for me, there's a connection between all of this and of how you sort of think about what is the behavioral change that needs to take root and what is the systemic change that needs to take root inside of a team or an organization. And so sometimes you need a mix of maybe a workshop, but you also need some coaching, or maybe it's really focused on coaching, or there's actually a process that we can improve. And what I have learned is that when you understand the team, the department and overarching company that you're working with to help, and at least this isn't, how I serve clients, you really can help get at those strategic changes as well. And so for me, it's a broad sort of change management perspective of like, what is the process? We might start at one place, but where we get to might eventually be something different. So I've started with clients where I do a workshop and coaching, and then eventually I do advisory work. I've also worked with clients where I do some kind of strategic project that leads to more coaching or workshops for, strategic clients as well.
I see. That is very interesting. So kind of like your offer to the current client could eventually evolve according to their needs and your expertise as well. That is a very
Yeah.
interesting approach. And throughout your coaching journey, which part of it do you find most rewarding since you started your coaching business?
I think it's the very thing of why people asked that I'm so committed to to doing what I do, which is humans are capable of change and change is possible, is what I always say. And so having that growth mindset, the neuroscience supports it, right? The rewiring you can, around your brain and that work. And so getting to see people have that unlock and the reality of, oh, some of the patterns that I am engaging in are actually not that I don't care about my people. It's coming across in a way that I'm not intending it to be. Oh, maybe it's more connected to my nervous system and I'm activated and my stress responses. Or, oh, I didn't realize that I really lacked knowledge about these different identities and cultures in the workplace. And maybe that's because I have felt underrepresented in the workplace for so long that the amount of time I have spent trying to bridge that gap and constantly navigate these spaces that didn't feel like they were designed for me can be really difficult. And so being able to coach people from so many different backgrounds and walks of life and lived experiences, but help them understand the self acceptance as well as the growth mindset that actually change is possible. And that's where I get the most satisfaction out of is seeing that. And every time somebody tries to tell me, oh, Jamie, the humans are the problem, that humans don't change. And I'm like, no, actually, I can tell you humans change. I've changed. And here's how I've seen clients change. So it is possible. And so I also feel like in times of challenge or strife that we go through as a society, as a culture, as a world, that ability to know that change is possible also gives you a sense of hope. And I think hope is important for us to keep moving forward.
I really like being able to break that belief that change is not possible and just like really show it to proof. You probably like it, like you said, you have clients that you've seen that change, you have changed yourself, you're living proof of that. Yeah. And many coaches that have gotten the podcast also have had the same impact. And it's actually interesting that the change is not only affecting that person's life, is affecting his family, is quite a bit of an impact that you are able to make.
Yeah. And I think it's there's so much opportunity and growth that has that micro. I always say it's that ripple, right? It's like throwing the rock in the water and it kind of spreads outward. I really believe that is at the core, the best of what coaching can do. Effective coaching can really be a part of that ripple. And to me, that's a part of making the world and workplaces in particular a place where every single person, I've always said, I want everyone to show up and say that this place was designed for me and with me in mind. And until we can say that for everyone, there's still work to do, right?
I really appreciate that. And when it comes to the people who you work with, who do you work with? Is it like a specific target audience that you're trying to reach? And what is the transformation that happens?
I would say, just because I spent so many years working with partners, managing directors, and executive teams, even very early in my career, because of some of the work I did in early on, and honestly, first in like marketing and practice management, and then eventually in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and broader talent overall, it's really led me to being in service of leaders, in particular leaders who are navigating some kind of pivot, some kind of change. Something is occurring. They're in a new role, they're interim, and maybe there's some gritty, challenging things around that they're trying to sort through and trying to find their way, especially a new leader in a role is trying to figure out how to enable their people. And so by virtue, I typically work with executive leaders, board of directors, senior leadership teams. But when you work with leaders of functions, by virtue, at least the ones I've seen who really are committed to creating a team that is collaborative and things, you start to work with their entire leadership team, right? And so then you start to get from there to midline leaders, right? And there's this opportunity, I think, to really have an impact because I do think midline, frontline leaders spend the most time with the people, most hands-on with the people. And so serving that. So my approach is instead of a top-down, it's a top-down, middle-up approach. So how do I engage with leaders, find opportunities to help empower and help their midline leaders? Because ultimately you close the gap like this, right? When you can move both the most senior in the organization and those who are kind of leading the masses of people together, that again, another ripple effect out into the organization.
And where do people find you or where do you find them?
A lot has been to date referrals, right? And in my network, organizations that I've worked with prior and the people who are there or somewhere else, right? So a lot has been through a referral process. I also find that because I do speak as well at speaking engagements, I start to meet people and they're like, oh, we need this strategy or that kind of thing. And so it's really been a lot through that. And I would say the piece of growth, and probably for other coaches out there trying to figure this out, is it's trying to figure out how to reach those audiences in multifaceted ways. So, being more present online, I would say one of my biggest hurdles I'm jumping over right now is having more of an online presence. And some of that was because I was in professional services for so long. And for people who don't know professional services, think law firms, management consulting firms. There's not as much often as a public voice that you have on social media because everyone is either a client or a potential client of your organization. So some of how people get to talk very openly and publicly, there are other parameters. And especially when I was coming up in my career, like social media at first was new. And then it was, how much can you say and all these things. And so a lot of my social media was always had to be private outside of LinkedIn. Right. And so I think now what I'm trying to, do is get more of a presence online. I'm also working on a podcast actually that I'll be launching soon to be able to connect with people more and have that impact, not just on the clients that I work with directly in corporate settings, but how can we bring that conversation outside of the workplace and supportive people? My idea is that if someone can listen to the podcast while they're getting ready, while they're commuting to work or to school or to whatever they're doing, and they're getting them thinking and getting them believing and understanding this intersection of who I am with my culture, identity, my, emotional intelligence and mental health, bringing all those things together creates a whole person. And so creating space to talk more about that is what I hope to do, which hopefully will then in turn provide a way to get my voice out into more public spaces.
Yeah, and hopefully that will also have like a ripple effect, just like you mentioned, but through the podcast, then you'll also grow your online presence and be able to reach out to more people, have a bigger impact overall. And I really like the podcast idea because it has been one of the things that has come up recently from coaches that I've interviewed that they are looking to go in and start their own podcast. The way I see it is in a world of AI, it just feels more human to have
Mm-hmm.
a podcast and to be able to present and talk in a more human way. And I feel that you can easily relate to your audience because they get to know your authentic self through the podcast. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Besides the podcast, is there any other goals that you're working towards for the next 1 to 3 years?
Yeah, I think obviously the podcast is definitely on the front burner. I think the other thing is just continuing to take my unique blend of cultural intelligence and change management and really being able to do more to help that human behavioral change. So whether that be a book idea, getting out to speak more and engaging more and getting more people, I think, engaged in the understanding that change is possible, right? That we can be a part of the change. And I think there's a lot happening in our world right now that is causing people to feel paralyzed, to feel scared, to feel uncertain. And those are all completely valid feelings. But if we just shut down, we've got to work our way through this and we've got to find our way. And we have to keep connecting with each other as humans. And so I think, like you said, in this world of AI, how do you keep creating this human experience so that we keep living and working and thriving as a society and in workplaces, right? So that people can have those futures and careers and things that they dream of, right? To be able to make that a fruition. So I think that a lot of what I've been kind of focused in on is how can I be in service of that, both in corporate settings and in a more interactive public space settings like the podcast.
In terms of investments in your coaching business, so far, has there been any investment that you feel actually has made a very good impact in growing your business? That could be any type of business, for example, like coaching programs, masterminds, communities, or anything else that you feel like actually invested money in and it helped grow the business?
Yeah, I think a few things. I always tell people first and foremost is whatever you do, whatever your craft is, hone your craft, right? So my coaching certification was through Coach Diversity Institute. It's one of the, if not the only program in the country that really embeds focusing on like that inclusive whole person, representative person. And so in the training, it's ICF certified, like a lot of people are interested in, which is the International Coaching Federation, right? And I learned so much about myself in that process. And I always tell people the best part about going through a coaching program is you get a lot of coaching and you practice coaching. So the work you have to keep doing for yourself is really important as a coach. And I think honing and figuring out people, and what's great now with 4.9 million podcasts, right, is there's a lot of people you can get access to that you wouldn't otherwise do. And so whether that's your Simon Sinek's or your Brene Brown or your, different creatives that you really like and follow has been really instrumental. And then I think finding other mentor coaches and entrepreneurs has been huge for me. I think that has really made a considerable difference. I think about Kim Carpenter, who's at People at the Center. She's been an amazing entrepreneur and coach, but also just a support system and a network. Manar Morales does a lot around flexibility and diversity with Diversity and Flexibility Alliance and wrote a book recently thinking about that very human-centric workplace. And so being able to have other entrepreneurs in my life who remind you what you can do. Because I think coming out of working in structural organizations that, you're driven by your strategic plan and all these things, gives you this sense of like security, if you will, in jobs. But we know that jobs can go away. And so the security is not as always secure as we think it is. And so I think the mind shift is probably one of the biggest things initially, which is like you're doing a lot of work on a lot of things. And so finding the other entrepreneurs who give you the quick hacks to make your work more efficient for you, to keep encouraging yourself in the belief in being an entrepreneur, what it takes to get a company, really engaged and off the ground has been incredibly helpful. So those are just some different things that I've done that I think have really made a difference.
Thanks for sharing all of that. And when it comes to like currently in your process of growing your coaching business further and getting your message out there, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you're facing in further scaling?
It's probably twofold, right? One I talked about a little bit, which is that presence, getting out there. So that's one. The other I would say is what's tricky, right, is everything you've heard me talk about is about being human centric and inclusive, and that all humans, like in the sense of our identity and culture, should be respected, honored. People should, I always say that everyone is a leading character in their own life. So you get to show up fully as you, and I should get to show up fully as me, and we should get to both exist in our workplace without discrimination, retaliation, or any of those things. But beyond the anti-discrimination policy, it's if we actually just all learned a little bit more about each other, we could do so much more to adapt and not just see things through our lens and our perspective first, but also learn other lenses, right? And so I always tell people I wear glasses. When you go to the eye doctor, there's that like 1, 2, 3, 4, where they're trying to see which one is clearer. That's the multitude of lenses that we should approach the world through. So if that's at the core center right now, especially in the United States, what's happening is very difficult in that there is a lot of people trying to make elements of the work illegal, all these things that's happening, the administration and things. And so it has been a challenging time to navigate that and know that at the end of the day, the work still continues and the work still matters and how you're going to do it. But it is an obstacle today where clients are scared. They don't want to get sued. They don't want they don't want all these things to happen. And so because of the topic that I coach on and the area that I focus on, a lot of people have said, "Oh, Jami, just pivot to a different topic." And I have wrestled with this quite a bit. And I truly believe that the work I do is as much as a skill I've built as a calling, and that I'm uniquely positioned to help people navigate changes, navigate across differences, and really get into those sticky things and be more effective as humans. And so staying the course in the midst of all of this is probably the greatest obstacle as far as scaling a business at this time, right? But it's something that I have made peace with, that's my purpose and that's what I'm here to do.
I really like that you're laser focused on inclusiveness, even when it comes to like your investments, even where you see your challenges. And I hope that you always continue to go through this, even though you have to wrestle sometimes with the opposing energy of like other people that might say that maybe it's not a good idea, or maybe you could do better in other niches or other topics. But I really like that you are continuously putting your effort into that, because I feel like it's one of the, even though it's a delicate topic, is the one that actually can make a real difference in the companies. If we are all inclusive, then teamwork would make the best work for the companies. So,
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah. We're going to have to do it together. So if I could be in service of that, of helping others, in their teams and how they lead and what we do, that's the best version of the way I can use my coaching skill set and all the rest of the work that I do that comes alongside that.
Thank you, Jamie. And is there any final advice you'd like to give to other career coaches who are looking to scale their impact?
The combination of not just honing the craft, but really finding each other, finding support systems, people who are doing something like you're doing, especially if Shonda Rhimes' book, The Year of Yes, she has a chapter called First Only Different, the FOD. It's one of my favorite chapters. It's actually on my nightstand and I read it pretty often because I've been an FOD in different aspects of my life. And so when you're trying to do something as an entrepreneur and this is new, and maybe you don't have a ton of people around you who've ever done it, look for ways to find coaches, whether it's through outreach in a podcast like this, where you might meet other coaches, through, different meetups. And there's so much now on social network and ways that we can connect with people. But I think finding communities, finding other entrepreneurs who will share and pour into you, and just have those real conversations about the times when it is hard or you are scared. And I think through coaching, you learn more about your own intuition in general, and trusting that. I have felt things click and lock in more when I trust my intuition and do what I know is what I'm meant to do. But it might mean that you're in a completely different lane that feels a little lonesome, but it is your lane. And it doesn't mean that you can't be in your lane and still find a network of people that will support you in the mission and purpose of what you're trying to do. So that's what I would say. It's just find those people to surround yourself with. And it doesn't have to be your closest friend group. Often it's not going to be, because if you're the first in your sort of community, your network, your family to ever do something, and that comes with a lot of obstacles. And so you need the people who have done that too, so that you can find that bridge to, support yourself and really go after what you're trying to accomplish as a coach. It's totally possible.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jamie. And for anyone who wants to find you or connect with you, they can go into LinkedIn, Jami de Lou, or they can also go into the website, deloustrategies.com. We'll be linking those also in our description. So for everyone who wants to find them, they can find that there as well. So thank you so much, Jamie. And let me know if there's any other way people could reach out to you.
All of my handle, you can find me at Jami de Lou. So whether you're on IG, wherever you go, that's where you can find me. So that's perfect. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's glad to be here.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. To learn more about Purple Circle, our community, and how we can help you grow your business, visit joinpurplecircle.com.